This is Software Engineering Radio, the podcast for professional developers on the web at se-radio.net. SE Radio brings you relevant and detailed discussions and interviews on software engineering topics every 2 weeks. Thanks to our audience and the partners listed on our website for supporting the podcast. Okay, welcome listeners to another episode of Software Engineering Radio. This one is recorded at Euroblob 2009. Not that that's important, but I thought I'd mention it. In this episode, we are going to talk about management, about how to become a manager, why and what you have to do to be a good manager. Of course, all of this in the context of software engineering or software development. So in some sense, this is a successor or a detailed episode to the roles episodes we've had a while ago. And well, I guess over time we will present more topics. Maybe at some point we'll get around to do something on, what does it take to be a consultant? Because that's one of these other roles we've had. But today we're going to talk about management. And you probably recognize that it's me, Markus, talking and asking the questions. And on the other end is Michael.
Hi, Markus.
Well, we've done several episodes before on various technical topics. So people might ask themselves, why am I interviewing you about being or becoming or managing? So maybe you want to say something about what's changed in your professional life, and then we can.
Yeah, the change in my professional life happened 2 years ago when I changed into a management position from a previously consultant and technical lead and expert position. And so basically what we're talking about is my experience over the past, I would say, more than 10 years, but more concretely the past 2 years. And some recommendations, findings that I experienced, and I thought it would be worthwhile to do an episode on. And well, as a disclaimer, it's really my private and personal opinion. Of course, somewhat synchronized with typical HR strategies, but still, it's a personal opinion, and consider it yourself what you make out of it.
Okay, so maybe let's start by defining what management is and what makes a good manager.
I think a good manager is one that cares about people very much in the first place, and it's about results. It's about leading the people towards achieving good to great results. It's not so much about deciding every day by your own. It's much more stimulating the organization, the teams below you, your team members to act proactively, to do a good job every day and become better every day on it, and support them. And then sometimes the situations will arise where you actually have to make a decision, where you have to make an informed and hopefully context-sensitive decision.
Are these then technical decisions, or are these typically more decisions regarding organization or staffing, so that those people you want to be in charge then make the right technical decisions?
Right. So it's mostly about strategy. It's about organization. It's about people. Those decisions that you would do as a R&D manager. It's less about any technical choices. If it's if it's a true cornerstone in your strategy, which determines your business in the course of the next 5 or 10 years. The R&D manager typically is involved and gets the presentation from the relevant staff, like, for example, the architect together with the product manager. They prepare a decision proposal, and it's basically reviewed by one R&D manager, or actually a committee where you look at it and check whether it is sound, whether they covered all the aspect, and whether it's a holistic view on the topic, whether it's not only biased by one angle of it.
So you've mentioned that your job as a manager is, among other things, to lead people and to motivate people to do good work. where do you lead them to? How do you know where you want to go as a manager? What's your goal? Who sets your goals?
The goals is basically in a large company. It's my organization. It's my mission. I actually had thought of saving this discussion about mission, vision, and strategy. Yeah. But why don't I bore you briefly right now with it?
So you really got involved very deeply into this management stuff, since you're trying to find the difference between those three terms. So let's try.
I think it's important. To be honest, in the past or very early in my career, I mixed them up and I was not sure whether this is actually necessary because, well, all the problems were at hand looking at the daily work. But really looking only at the daily work, that's not sufficient. I mean, you need to look one or several years actually ahead where you want to be. And there we come to the mission. I mean, who are you? Who are you as an organization? Why are you making a difference to the world, to your customers? Why should customers actually buy something from you? So who are you is the mission.
So and the typical mission would be, we strive for good customer relations.
Well, this would be a bit too generic. Well,
I was of course provoking.
We are, for example, we are the best in image visualization in this and that domain.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is really our core competence.
So it's a way of identifying your core competency also.
Right.
And giving an expression to it.
Right.
Okay.
So what you're really good about it, where your organization, your people get excited about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is as so often in life, what you can get excited about it, you will most probably be good in. And where you're good in, you will have success and also business success, yes, ultimately. Then, so this was the mission thing. So you know who you are. Next is the vision. I mean, where should you strive for example, within the next 5 years or so?
Right.
Like drawing a goal which is ahead of you. I mean, an ambitious goal, really.
Like becoming the market leader in
coffee served on the go. In this and that market, yeah, with this and that kind of product.
Okay.
Would be, for example, a vision. And then that is the goal. And now what's missing, that's the path, how to reach that goal.
Yeah, that's the strategy.
And that's the strategy ultimately. So how can I reach, how do I plan to reach that goal, the ultimate goal?
So going back to my original question, although I think this is an interesting discussion because many software people laugh about these terms, right? Vision, mission, strategy, blah, you know.
Management, buzzwords.
Right, exactly.
Bullshit,
well,
bingo.
They also need their buzzwords, right? Not just the technical people. But so how does this tie into the question of that I asked before? How do you know where you need to go? What you need to motivate your people to get to?
I mean, that is then what you as a manager at any level derive from your organization's mission and vision. This is your strategy. And you can really translate your strategy into operative goals for the next half year, for the next year, where you really decide on how to approach to reach the goals.
And it helps you probably also to prioritize things you need to do, because if they don't get you, ahead on your strategy towards your vision, then probably you shouldn't do them.
Right. So this is really then the healthy filter applied to all activities that you do. Skim through your activities. Do they support your strategy or don't they? And if, as I would guess in most organizations today, you are overloaded by stuff, yes, look at things that really don't support your strategy. And either your strategy is wrong or you're doing actually superfluous stuff or things that don't lead you to your goal.
So if you're some kind of manager of a 10 people development team, very deep down in the corporate hierarchy, I guess it's not very useful to take the company mission, vision, strategy to derive from. So in some sense, is it the case that like every department needs its vision? And do these terms apply hierarchically down the chart?
Basically, you make it more concrete at every level. You express there your more details give it more details and make it more concrete in your environment. But you coordinate yourself with your superior manager, whether that is in line with his understanding of the vision and the strategy.
So you're basically saying you understand the vision and strategy of the organization above you, where you are, the set of your peers and the boss of your boss, basically the mission, vision, and strategy of your boss's organization.
Right.
And then you come up with your own one, and then recheck that with your boss, whether he agrees, and that's the guidance for where and how you lead.
That's the guidance, for example, for the next year, how you lead, and of course you try to line out how would that work over the next 2 or 3 years horizon.
And is that concrete enough? I mean, I guess the strategy is maybe 2 pages, the vision is 1 sentence, the mission is 2 sentences. I mean, what other input do you get from your boss on a daily basis? I mean, how does that work?
Well, the daily input you would get basically is conversations with the customers, where you learn, well, where is the market going, where are our customers going, what is really going on around me in the organization. This has, of course, impact on what I'm doing daily, how I'm leading. It forms the initiatives, and the strategy is, as I said, more a filter to find the right initiatives, find the right actions to do in your daily work.
So, as you said, you've changed your career from a very technical path to this management kind of thing. Do you think? And of course, you're still managing in a software environment. Software isn't everything, but software is a big part of what your company is building. So is it essential that you have developed software before? How important is the detailed technical understanding for what you're doing?
Well, there I have I had heavy discussions with peers and superiors where some say, well, at a certain level you need to be a general manager more than really a technical expert or anything. Or maybe it gets you into the way. And actually, you have to be careful not to tell people the solution, but challenge them on the problem understanding so that they find a solution. So when you don't get into your way with or when the technical knowledge and understanding doesn't get into your way but supports you, then it's a very good idea to have been a software developer.
And with getting in your way, you mean that you don't try to make the technical decisions for your experts.
Right, because nothing is more boring and frustrating for every employee, for every developer, architect, whatever, than when the boss tells you exactly do this and that. I mean, right. We're all knowledge workers. We work with our brains. We are motivated by the freedom and empowerment we get, and by telling your employees what they should do exactly as the next 5 steps today, tomorrow, and the day after, that's very frustrating, and that's a big caveat that you can fall into.
So you use your technical expertise to look behind the buzzwords, to avoid bullshit bingo, and to ask the right question in order to lead the others to the right solution.
To challenge, to find actually the best solutions, not proposing the solutions, but being really being able to do context-sensitive decisions, and supporting my guys. Because, well, I believe only if you truly understand what kind of problems they face, how difficult it could be to solve, any specific kind of bugs that you have, then you can support them best. I mean, you don't say, well, solve it till tomorrow, but when you see, well, they have this and that stability trouble, you know that it takes time, and you also know what it needs to take on action, so you can support your team if they are not so experienced yet, and give them some guidance and hints what they could try and look at and look into. If you haven't been in such a position, well, the team might fail. You get pretty frustrated with the team.
You can always hire some other guy, some kind of quote consultant who brings in that knowledge. So you could argue that as a manager, you don't have to know these things. You have to know when the time is right to get external help. I'm not saying that's right, just provoking, of course.
No, that's right. I mean, you don't need to understand exactly, but you need to have a gut feeling. A gut feeling at a, 10,000 feet level. Is this right? Is this wrong? Does this lead us in the right direction? And for any detailed guidance, you would actually hire a consultant or get an expert from a neighbor department.
So don't you miss the technical work? I mean, you've done all this technical work. You've written books on technical topics, and now you're doing this quote boring management stuff. Don't you miss some of the geeky stuff?
No, I don't miss it because, well, I don't know why, but I kind of became fed up with technology by some means. I mean, seeing technology just reinventing the wheel somehow in certain areas. Well, there's my favorite topics are like web services. Anybody who has been deeply involved in middleware and how it's structured, and we actually wrote a book on it, seeing that web services becomes a hype and reinvents many of the concepts that have been around for a long time. It's my interest in technology became very minor. On the daily working basis, I saw always organizational and process issues, and this not only in my regular work but also as an architecture reviewer. And so I felt the urgent need to have a more impact, to not only consult from the background, but to actually make the faults and errors myself.
So is that the reason why you became a manager? So you have a bigger leverage,
It's a bigger leverage. It's not the ultimate power that I strive for, but to have a bigger leverage. I mean, it might seem as you have more power, it's just you're closer to the source where things can go wrong really majorly.
You're saying is that every fish starts stinking at its head. I think that's the saying, at least
kind
in German.
Of like,
I don't know if it works in English, but
kind of like that. Not saying that every R&D manager besides me doesn't know how to do the business, but really supporting from that angle. And I have been consultant to managers over many years. And so I thought, in the conversation I sensed, I think I have something to say here, and I have fun working with people. Actually, I prepared a list of things that I thought are crucial if you want to become an R&D manager.
Let me ask. So you say you became a manager because you kind of thought that you actually have this additional leverage. Is that true? Can you give an example of, let's say, a big change that you've introduced into an organization that where you think, wow, cool, that worked. That will make a difference.
One example is agility, and for me, it's the way that software should be developed, because agility honors software as a matter, and our classical waterfall processes didn't really honor software and with its complexity and its behavior, and their agility does a much better job. Now, how do you introduce agility to an organization as an individual?
To an organization that is quite traditional in its
traditional in its sense. Either you have guys around you and enough grassroots power, or you won't succeed. And now, for example, in my today's position, I can help from a management level and support and really foster such change initiatives, changing the mindset at all levels. And so this is what I operate today, really at any level, from an individual contributor, developer, to a senior management level, and explaining, talking, changing mindset.
Okay, so you've started saying that you've prepared a list before I interrupted you. So let's get back to the list you've prepared. Maybe you say again what the list was about.
It's about what's important in a manager's life, what that kind of skill set and mindset you should have. One is, for example, the listening skills to really feel and sense this unsaid between sentences. Whenever you talk to somebody, your peer, your superior, any employee, there's also things that are said between the lines. And so this is kind of necessary to be a good manager, I feel, because very often as a manager, you're the one who gets informed about stuff the last. And so with this reading between the lines, you have a chance to still get your information and sense where you might need to look into more details.
So reading between the lines can, for example, mean that you actually... So, I mean, I don't know how many levels of managers are between you and the individual developer. I don't know.
Today there's one level.
One additional level. Right. So what this means, if I understand you correctly, is that sometimes you walk around in the trenches where the real guys sit and talk to them and skip the guy between you to talk to these people and to understand their feelings.
Right. Exactly. And so for preparing for this show, I thought, well, how could you as a developer today like train or exercise the skill set? And I remember that some situations where peers of me, two other developers or the requirements engineer and the developer had some conflict resolution and negotiation conversations with them, supporting them and resolving my own conflicts when I had some with others helped me a lot in practicing this kind of skill set.
So acting as the third party that tries to help the others agree on something.
For example, yes.
In German is called Schlichter. I don't know the English term. Okay.
Another thing is what helps you greatly in preparing for any R&D manager position is leading without authority or leading without power. And this, what I mean with that is, for example, the architect. An architect has typically no
role power or
formal power, has no line responsibility there. But still he needs to get things achieved, he needs to change things, he needs to have an influence on decisions, reviews things. And either as architect or even as a developer, you have the chance to make such impacts and be challenged with such situations in big initiatives or any projects, special projects that are set up regularly in your organization. So why don't you volunteer next time and try to lead basically without the power and try to how that works out, because at the end of the day, as a line manager, you do the same.
I was about to ask that, because why would you want to train leading without power if your goal is to become a manager who has the role power?
Because knowledge workers or in software development, you don't lead with power. If you lead with power, you demotivate, and that is actually the last you like to do.
Okay.
Another thing is be really well self-managed. With that I mean time management, like the Eisenhower rules, do the important and urgent stuff first. The 4 categories, I don't explain in detail, do use Wikipedia on that, the Eisenhower time management
put a link
rules.
to the show notes.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is so, I mean, this resolves your own stress level and actually makes you then able to lead also others. If you're overburdened with your daily work anyway, it might not be a good starting situation leading others.
I mean, we aren't paid by those guys, but I think it's still worthwhile hinting at the Manager Tools podcast, where they talk about the essentials of management. And I think one of them is delegation. So you have to be able to let loose and let somebody else do something. Yes. And the other one, I think, is coaching, one-on-ones, and these kinds of things. So you should, if you're interested in that stuff, go listen to the Manager Tools podcast.
I started off with listening skills, but equally important are the communication skills. There's one saying in one book, try first to understand, then to be understood. I believe it's part of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Right. And that's very true in the daily life. So whenever you have then understood what's going on, to communicate in a proper way becomes essential. So being able to talk with a certain sensibility of who you talk with and tune yourself basically to your counterpart.
Does it also involve, you certainly have heard about the DISC model, where different people have different characteristics, and some people, like you, for example, I know that if I meet you somewhere and I'll, hey Michael, great to see you. How are you doing today? Your answer will be okay, because you're not the kind of guy who has loves the small talk stuff. I don't either. So
get to the point.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So also trying to use a communication style that fits your opposite.
Right.
Is that one of the things you're saying?
I mean, that the DISC model or MBTI or any other model, yes, thinking in those terms, but just sensing into the other person, what kind of situation is he in? When you read between the lines, he's not so happy today, he had some trouble, whatever, then you don't make jokes about this and that.
Yeah.
Or when you feel, he's overburdened with something anyway, don't give him an assignment in the first sentence or things like that.
Right. You talked about communication skills. Does this also involve writing? The point I'm trying to get at is you've written 2 books, right?
Yes.
Do you think that helped or helps you now, so you're able to communicate complex things, technical or organizational, in written form to other people?
Well, it helps me writing emails fast because of the typing. But
I guess that's not what I meant.
Yes, I know. So I was joking.
Yeah, sure.
So being precise in emails and getting things to the point orally, it helps me as well, yes, because especially the patterns books help you structure things.
Right.
Sometimes you get so structured, you get so to the point with no introduction that it also can be not so beneficial. But most of the time, I think it helps you structure your thoughts, focus on what's really the problem, and differentiate the problem from the solution.
Yes.
And not mix them up in any conversation.
I find myself in this role more and more, that I hear people, developers and domain experts, whatever, talk about things, and they seem to not understand each other. So my role then is to listen to what they're saying, try to understand it, formulate it very clearly, put up a straw man, say, is that what you're saying? And then they can either agree or not. And I think it's really a consequence of writing a lot, and as you say, of all this pattern stuff.
Yeah. The structured thinking about stuff. And this is what I learned. This is the connection between my past career and my today's career. If you think about organizational development, if you think about roles, about processes, about interactions, suddenly you're again in the pattern space. Setting up an organization, lining out the organization, how it's supposed to work, how individuals might fill a certain role, and what kind of things might go wrong in that role. That's very, very similar at the end of the day to how we talk about patterns. Why are there organizational patterns out there? Why is that a big field in our pattern community? Yeah. Because it's very similar to software design at the end of the day.
And even if you look at CRC cards, right? They are about, I paraphrase a little bit, they're about entities, their responsibilities, and the interactions. And that's exactly what a team structure and an organizational structure is.
Yeah. And so this is part of a job description as a manager, to care about that. And whenever you have a new role, a new position filled with somebody, this person will bring with him his own personality and his own way of living that responsibility, filling out this role. And there you're demanded as a manager to look, does this work out? Is there any lack of training? Is there something needed? Or do you need to shape your other roles and positions differently to share the workload better and more efficient?
Mm-hmm. More things on your list?
More things on my list? Well, it helps if you have been in the roles that you lead, actually. So, for example, you become a team lead of a software development team. It helps when you have been a developer, as we discussed before. If you have looked into testing, if you have a project manager within your team, when you do more classical software development, it helps when you have been a project manager to understand what the daily life and the trouble could be in those positions.
So you're saying it's good if you have been in the roles of the people you now manage?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Very generally.
Yeah.
It just helps you being better understanding to your people.
So this somehow opposes the idea that there is something such as general management. So like it doesn't matter whether you manage a bunch of software developers or a bunch of coffee salesmen. I tend to think the same thing, but there are other folks, and for example, I think the manager tools guys advocate that, who say it doesn't matter. Management is always the same.
I think how do I put that politically correct?
You don't have to.
At a close level to software developers, at the first 2 levels or so, you should be really well understanding what is going on.
Okay.
Have a proper domain understanding, have a understanding about what you work with, because you have to support the environment and cannot solely rely on that somebody will tell you the right things. Have a own gut feeling about it.
Right.
The higher you get up, I tend to agree that general management is an important, can be a very big factor, and you need less domain expertise, because ultimately, I mean, how old do we get, in how many domains can we really gain deep insight is one thing, and the pattern repeats itself at a higher level. You have the experts, you lead managers that lead themselves again with 100 or 1,000 guys.
And I guess even if you say that on a lower level you do need domain know-how and expertise in the fields of those people you lead, you would probably agree that maybe 60 or 70% are generic management practices, and then only these 40 or 30% is the specific knowledge.
Right. All I said about communication skills, manage yourself well, and focus. For next thing I like to introduce is focus on results. That is general management thing. This is just very, very common, and it's just the domain expertise and really the understanding of, for example, software development. That is the extra 30-40% maybe, if you want to put it into percentages. So focus on results is something.
What does that mean?
Important. Well, I give a counter example. Whenever there is a new assignment, whenever there is a decision pending, think really on who has to benefit first. Should I introduce this technology, this concept, because I like it so much, because it's so cool, because I want to learn about it, or because my project at hand has the lowest experiences the lowest risk, and the company and the project the biggest benefit of it. I mean, focus really on your decisions on the end result, and do proper risk mitigation, and put yourself out of the line of decisions, your personal tendencies.
So to quote a pattern that we've reviewed today that you have written, at least co-written, objectify decision making. Right. Don't do it because you like it, but really provide a clear rationale and reasons and trade-offs for decisions you make.
Right.
Also helps you save your ass in case something goes wrong.
Exactly. I mean, this is focus on the project results, on the health of the organization first, before you think too much about yourself. And I mean, that is what I see. We humans get into our ways too easily in decisions or in our daily work.
So how do you succeed as a manager? What do you have to do to well, in the end, you want to be promoted. Not you personally, but as a manager, you want to make a career, you want to be promoted. So what are you judged by? When are you considered successful as a manager and hence are promoted?
When my people are happy, when my results are okay to create, when there is trust from my superiors that I could manage even greater challenges.
Right.
So, and this trust is the gut feeling. That is the warm, fuzzy feeling you leave with others, you leave with your organization.
Yeah.
That this organization trusts you. I mean, this is trust in you is promotion.
Yeah, that is what I wanted to get at, and thank you that you said these things, because this kind of re-emphasizes that you're not incentivized for bringing in clever stuff, but you are going to be promoted if your guys do good work. So that's why what you said before actually makes a lot of sense.
And I thought, what kind of advice would I give you? Whether you should consider it. I mean, it's really the question. Ask yourself why you would like to be a manager. It's what for? What would be your motivation? And there are some healthy motivations that will get you really advanced, and there are some motivations that get you stuck then at latest at the next level or so.
Yeah.
And some healthy motivations is have a bigger impact, feel comfortable with working, enjoying working with people, caring about then being a servant for the organization for the bigger success.
All of this sounds great, bright and shiny. There have to be some disadvantages. So what is bad about being a manager? What's the most difficult thing you have to do? What is unpleasant about all that?
I mean, the most unpleasant thing which could happen to a developer or an employee is exactly the most unpleasant thing for a manager. And this is when you, in a downturn, as we experience right now worldwide, you would have to let go people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having those conversations, explaining why your organization fails to withstand the downturn, why there is no position anymore, is amongst the most difficult. But now making it not so traumatic as really letting somebody go, giving feedback in critical situations, or when you think, this person should know what his behavior does to others or the organization. Basically, some, how should I say that, corrective feedback. Yeah. Those are always then interesting, challenging discussions, but it's really where you can employ your full skill set.
Yeah. So well, yeah, it's what I would have expected. Being the messenger for bad news,
right?
Even either small bad news or big bad news. So you don't feel frustrated that you are in this big environment where there is a lot of inflexible structure around you, and you maybe don't have as much impact as you would like to have. Isn't that another one of these potentially unpleasant things?
Well, you mentioned the reason that the situation that I work in a big organization.
Yes.
Well, big organizations, and that is not only my company, I think that is a general pattern. I know that it's a general pattern, actually. Talking through colleagues and having been in multiple big corporations. Big corporations are complex, yes. Big corporations have challenges in communication and coordination.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's the complexity what excited me early in my career in technology. It's the complexity in organization to deal with and still be efficient, still be successful. What excites me in my daily life.
Okay, so I guess we're at the end of what we had prepared. Is there anything else you want to say that I forgot to ask?
No, I think we're through with what we planned for that. What I like to mention, please give us feedback on our webpage or write me a personal email if you feel it's too personal. I'm very happy about feedback and if you have any recommendations.
Okay, so I guess then that's it for today, and I guess maybe perhaps in half a year or something we do the reverse thing where I talk about being a consultant and you ask me about it.
I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks for listening to Software Engineering Radio. Software Engineering Radio is an educational program brought to you by Hillside Europe. If you want more information about the podcast and all the other episodes, visit our website at se-radio.net. If you want to support us, you can donate to the SE Radio team via the website, or you can advertise for SE Radio, for example, by clicking on the Dig Reddit Delicious links and the /dot button. To contact the team, please send email to team@se-radio.net, or if it is specific to an episode, please use the comments facility on the website so other people can react to your comments. This episode of SE Radio, as well as all other episodes, are licensed under the Creative Commons 2.5 license. Please see the website for details. Thanks to Charlie Crow and the Podsafe Music Network for the music used in this show. The song is called Vegas Hard Rock Shuffle.